Good morning, church family. Before we get to today's message for you, I just have a quick reminder and maybe a quick little update and announcements for what's hopefully going to be taking place or what we're going to be working on here in the next couple of weeks. First of all, for the reminder, this is our week of home delivered meals. And if you did sign up to do that, I just want to remind you to please remember that day. If you forget what day you signed up to go be a part of that, you are more than welcome to get a hold of Janine in the church office Monday through Thursday from 9 to 12. She'll be in here and she can remind you and let you know on that. The thing that I want to give you a quick update on, and kind of, I guess, reminder, because Craig mentioned this, but tomorrow night on Monday, we are going to actually, with the leadership team, be meeting again and evaluating where we're at as a county and as a church and everything else, and just determining what the next 2 weeks are going to look like as far as gathering together or whether we're going to continue in this avenue. I want you to know nobody wants to continue in this avenue, but we are going to be praying about what God is wanting us to do as far as that gathering, including the health of everybody and just the situation at hand. So I just ask, would you please be in prayer that we can make the decision that is the wisest and that is really in step with what God knows is going on and what He desires for us to do. So that'll be taking place tomorrow night on Monday, and we just covet your prayers. If you got any thoughts, feel free to contact us, and we'll see where it goes. But for now, for a moment, would you just bow your head and would you calm your mind, calm your heart, whatever you're doing, wherever you're at, whatever's been going on, and just ask God through this avenue to once again let you hear what you need to hear today, especially as we go into this Advent season. Ask Him to start it off with this first message, with what we're starting with everything going on, and connect with you where He needs to connect with you today. Hope. It's just one of those things. One of those things that can lead to great excitement or great disappointment. The hope for a good grade, the hope for a clean bill of health, the hope for relational faithfulness, the hope that things really work out for good. And then hope lets you down. You didn't make the grade, the illness has returned, your relationship has been betrayed. Things are not working out like you had hoped. Now what? Do you dare to hope again? Do you dare to trust again? Do you dare to take a step of faith again? Where do you find a hope that will last, a hope that will satisfy, a hope that won't let you down, a hope that works in this thing called life? We can find hope in the God of all hope, the God who is strong enough to act, in the God who cares enough to act. No matter what happens, because of this God, there is still hope. If we would have been gathered together in person today, that would have been our Advent reading for the day, and we would have lit that first candle of hope. But as I read it and as I think about it and as I wonder and I even consider the situation that we're in right now, I want to ask, do you still believe that this year? Or do you find yourself struggling with hope? At least at times, especially this time of the year. See, overall, I think I'm doing okay. I've got on here many times and just shared of the struggles, and trust me, they are still there. I do still have my moments of struggles, which are more common throughout this year and even at this time than they were last year. I even had struggles getting ready for this message and for this Advent season overall, just because it just doesn't feel right. Everything is just so out of whack. It's hard to even imagine that we're here. But without going back into all the stuff that's happened this last year, we don't need to rehash it. We all know that's taken place. I ask, if you're entering this season with hope and with expectation, and those other words we talk about at Christmas time of love and joy and peace. Because see, I realize it's hard to keep from getting tired right now, or to keep from being bummed out right now, to keep from having such a hurt for others who are hurting, and to keep from being frustrated, and to even just keep from being tired of talking and thinking about it all. It's so understandable, and it's hard to hang on to hope. And so I ask that question. As we enter this season, as you just enter this day, as you continue to wake up each day in life, are you waking up with hope? I mean, I'm sure you have good days and positive days where things are more optimistic and you're ready to tackle the world and things seem to be good. But then you get a phone call, or you receive a text, or you read another article, or you allow yourself to jump on Facebook and view another argument or fight. Or if you're like me, you find yourself talking to a camera again. And you find yourself battling that just feeling that just is at the bottom of all of us, where we're just ready for it all to be done. Where are you at? Do you still find yourself battling that? Or are you living with hope? Today, what I want to share something is maybe just something that is really honestly quite a simple reminder that might help us at least start this season and start this first Sunday of Advent, experiencing maybe a little bit, again, of the reminder that we can have hope if we are struggling with it. Because like I said, I have struggled. I have asked God, hey, I'm not necessarily down and just struggling with everything, but it's just hard to get motivated and hard to get inspired and hard to even just believe that we're here at this time and that we're in this season, which is normally my favorite time of the year, especially to be with everybody. It's hard because it's out of whack. And so I've had to ask myself, am I living with hope? And I ask you the same. Are you living with hope? Because I think if you do that, and if you ask him to help, if you feel that you're not, he will answer. I asked him to, just through this and in preparing and thinking about this, hey, please give me some hope again. Let me just remember that I can live in hope. Inspire me, motivate me, keep me going. And he will answer, and he did answer. He's in little things. I know it sounds maybe cliche or sentimental or whatever, but Leanne and Morgan put up the Christmas tree yesterday, and what a difference that makes in the house, just to get up in the morning and plug in those lights and sit by the tree. It began to give a little feeling of, hey, there is something here. They did a great job. It was just nice to be able to sit and to bask in that this morning. And that helped bring a little bit of hope. And God will do little things like that when we ask him for that hope if we're struggling with it. But another thing he did for me is he took me to two different moments, two different stories in my time of study and preparing this that brought perspective back, that reminded me why we can hope. But it also was one that explained why I felt and connected with me, that talked about why I felt the way I feel. And it was about a pastor who said he'd spent many seasons of Advent sharing messages like many pastors do, encouraging people and pushing people to do something to make Christmas more valuable and effective and memorable. And he was gearing up to do that again for another Christmas. And a young woman, a young mother actually came to him and shared that she had some misgivings about the idea of hearing another message like that in this particular year. And he claimed about her, he says she was a mature Christian. She was strong. And so she, of course, appreciated the spirit behind the messages that were being given. She appreciated what was the intent and why he was sharing the things that he was sharing. But she says during the Advent season, She had been longing for something more, not just another guilt-inducing exhortation about what needs to be done to get Christmas right and the things that she would need to do. But in her words, or in his words, she wanted a message of hope about what God's already done to put the world to rights in Jesus. And he described her talking to him when she said she was standing on a back wall of the church during one of the 4 o'clock Christmas Eve services in years past, bouncing a baby on her hip and listening to, again, another well-intended message that he was sharing. And his well-intended desire and things that he was putting out there. And she made this honest confession. She said, I wanted a message that just didn't hinge on me doing one more thing, as if my action or thought is what makes Christmas real. She said, I wanted the hope that God's gift of Jesus has already transformed the world, whether I achieved it or not. I wanted to be reminded of that hope. And when I read that, it struck me because it made me go, that's where I'm at, though I may not even realize that that's where I'm at. And I'm guessing that's where many of you may be also. The reminder of what God has already done in Jesus to transform the world and put the world to rights, whether we're conscious of it, whether we can see it, whether we feel like we're experiencing it or not. And so that drove me. And then as I continued to study and prepare, I came across another message, which we're following the theme that the Church of God is putting out this year, because I think it fits, called Experiencing the World Changer. And the pastor that was helping with some of the material on that actually shared this story. He says, a man fell into a pit and he couldn't get himself out. How many of us can maybe relate to that even right now, whether it's mentally or emotionally or spiritually or whatever it is? But he fell into a pit and he couldn't get himself out. And a Christian Scientist came along and he said to him, you only think you're in a pit. And then a Pharisee came along and said, only bad people fall in a pit. And then a fundamentalist said, you deserve the pit. And then a charismatic said, just confess that you're not in a pit. And then a social gospel pastor came by and he said, we brought you some food and clothing for why you're in the pit. And then a Calvinist showed up and said, this was no accident, you know. And then an optimist came by and said, hang on, things are going to get better. And then the pessimist followed and said, actually, things are really just going to get worse. And the man was struggling and hurting, and then along came Jesus, who did what he always does and simply reached down, grabbed his hand, and pulled him out of the pit. That is the gift that was given to us at this season and this eventually day we celebrate that we call Christmas. And the hope that we can hang on to is that we were gifted someone who can continually and willingly, desiringly pull us out of our pit. When I heard this, when I began to understand and connect with this woman and then hear this story that this pastor shared, it was a simple and welcomed reminder that this is who Jesus was and still is, no matter what is taking place around us or within us, whether we are conscious of it or not. He has always been the one who wants to pull people from the pit, and his desire and willingness and even capability of pulling people from their pits is still the same today. That is why we can have hope. Because see, I don't know what you're experiencing, but that is why we can have hope. Because there truly was, in a moment of history, a day when this man arrived, the pit pulling out of whatever you want to call it, Jesus that he is. And he's still here for us today. Made me think of a passage that we often read at this time of this Christmas season and this whole thing. And I want to read it today because I think if we just stop and read or listen and let these words wash over us, this truth, this promise that was shared, that was going to happen, that ended up taking place, and we would allow it to actually just be truth in our lives, we would begin to grasp a little bit more of that hope again. So I'm going to ask you to open to Isaiah 9. And just to give you a little context before I read, I want to share with you that these words are a promise of hope that were shared to a nation. And I find it fitting, just think of everything going on, but they were words of hope that were shared to a nation who was facing national trauma and disaster and even despair. Israel is literally facing foreign invasion as the Assyrians are threatening to invade from the north and from the south. And truthfully, after just a few short years of this writing, they actually follow through on that threat to do that. So these guys are facing the potential and fear of the annihilation of their total country by foreigners. And though their circumstances are different, just put yourself in those shoes and think about what would be taking place. And those circumstances might be a little different and a little more, maybe even severe sounding in some ways, but maybe not, maybe just different. There probably would be my guess that their mood is probably not much unlike what we are experiencing over this last year. It was a bad mood, and it was only going to get worse. They may or may not have known it, depending on where they were, what they did or didn't know. It was only going to get worse for them. Actually, Isaiah knew that it was going to get so bad that he actually claimed that they're eventually going to be where they will look toward the earth and they'll see only distress and darkness and fearful gloom. And then they would eventually be thrust into utter darkness. That's how bad the situation that Isaiah is going to speak into in this prophecy is going to take place. This message of hope, this message of hang in there, that's how bad it was going to get. And in the face of that, Isaiah still knows that they have concrete, legitimate reason for hope. In fact, the words and the way that they were written were actually cast in the form of a poem or even a song, and they were actually a celebration of hope. And that's because Isaiah knew that God is going to put the world to rights and redeem these people eventually. In fact, he was so confident that he actually writes this, and he casts it in a past tense as though it's already happened. Because from both his perspective and truthfully God's, it has. It was as good as done. That was a promise of God. So against this dark backdrop of national despair and gloom, just let these words wash over you. I'm going to go back and read those words that I just said again to set the scene. It says, they will look toward the earth. It's going to get so bad, and he knows it. It's there, the potential, all of that. It will get so bad that they will look toward the earth and they will see only distress and darkness and fearful gloom, and they will be thrust into utter darkness. Nevertheless, Isaiah says, there will be no more gloom for those who were in distress. In the past, he, God, humbled the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, but in the future, he will honor Galilee of the nations by the way of the sea, beyond the Jordan. And how will he do that? The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. I just love how he writes that. He's saying this is what's going to happen. They're going to see a great light. A light's going to dawn. But again, he's writing in a past tense because he's so confident it's as good as done. You have enlarged the nation and increased their joy. They rejoice before you as people rejoice at the harvest, as warriors rejoice when dividing the plunder. For as in the days of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning, will be fuel for the fire. For to us a child is born. To us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. And he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. of the greatness of his government and peace, there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. Did you catch that? Through the gift of a son, through the birth of a child, light was going to begin to come in the darkness, and hope would be available in despair. Isaiah was letting the king and eventually the people know that they could keep on and hang on and keep up hope, because there was light at the end of the tunnel. There was a gift that was going to be given that would bring them so much. And that gift did arrive in the form of a child. Now again, it's hard to comprehend, it's hard to grasp, it's hard to imagine, because the truth is that gift did not show up to about 800 years after this was written. So those people at that time, those particular ones there, didn't get to experience it. But even with that in mind, Isaiah knew that that was going to be the hope, the only hope. What we have the privilege of is being on the other side of that. It has now happened. It did take place. That child that was going to be born, the son that was going to be given, he was born. He was given. For God so loved the world that he gave. There has been a child born to us. There has been a son given. It actually did happen, and he's even still here. He's still among us. He is still with us. Yes, and through the Holy Spirit is how he connects. But he does reign the right hand of the Father. He is there. The Holy Spirit moves among us. But it's not something to look forward to. It's something that we can hang on to right now because he is here. The great light did dawn and is still available to you and I today. He was, in his own words, the light of the world, and he is still available to light the world for us today. Don't miss this. This is a big deal. Maybe one of my favorite parts, I love that passage that a child is born and the reality that took place, but the first description comes way before he even says that about who this child is, and that he is a great light, a light that has dawned on those who are living in the land of darkness. That is so important. We cannot miss this. I think sometimes we're so used to having light. It's shining in my eyes right now as I record this. We're so used to that being there that we tend to just almost forget how amazing and how wonderful and what a gift that light is for us. When we allow light into dark and confusing and scary situations, it brings peace and hope and the ability to keep moving on no matter the circumstances. It really does, but we're so used to it. It's not until we're in those situations that we strongly desire it, even if we don't realize it. In fact, I shared with you last week of that moment, that first morning when I was in my time of isolation from the COVID situation. And I shared with you that, it is a moment that I have never experienced in my life. It was like it was beyond anything that I could control, but I did try and control it. When I woke up at 4 o'clock and when I was heading back to bed, what hit me was just something that, yes, I've had claustrophobic moments, and that was like that. I'm part of it. I've had anxiety-filled moments, and it was like all of it. But it was like everything into one, and it hit me so hard, but I tried everything I could to fix it. I tried to go back to sleep and sleep it off. I turned on a borrowed TV to try and listen to just like I said, worship on YouTube, and let the light of that and the sound of that bring me some peace. And it helped to be able to do that a little bit. I couldn't sleep. Once I realized Leanne was up, or she realized I was up, whatever it was, as she was down doing her devotions, she could hear somebody moving around. I tried talking to her and just hearing her voice, and it really did help. I paced. I tried all kinds of other ideas. I prayed. But you know what eventually brought me the calm and the peace that I just so deeply desired? Was when the sun came up. And the light started to fill the room. The natural light of the day started to fill the room. There was something, and again, I can't explain it. It wasn't like I just went, oh, good, thank you, there's light. There was something about when that light started to come through the windows, and I started to see the sun come up and start to overtake the darkness that was in that room in all of its forms. I started to experience peace and hope that I could get through it. My situation didn't change. In fact, it was just beginning. My problems weren't all fixed. I was still stuck in the same little room with the same future for a while facing me, with all of this going on. That had not changed. The only thing that changed, the only difference that brought hope and peace, was the light that started to fill the room. That's what made the difference. That's how important light is to us, even when we tend to not be conscious of it or realize it. And that's the gift of hope that we were given as someone who can bring light into our lives. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has done. He was telling them he's going to come. If you're writing it for us today, he would say he's already come. The light's here. Just pull up the blinds and let him through the window. And let him penetrate your heart and your life. Here's the deal. Right now, we continue to walk through what has been predicted to be a long, dark winter. And if you know who said that, I'm sure everybody's got opinions on what was said about that. But the truth is, it's not that far off. At least not emotionally for some of us, or mentally, maybe even physically. Some of us are genuinely feeling and experiencing that prediction coming true, and more than just what is taking place in our visible world. We are experiencing that. Some are genuinely continuing to experience our emotional and mental and spiritual world feel like a time of darkness, almost like that dark night of the soul that we've heard about. And the end result is leaving us with the feeling of fear and hopelessness and anger and shame and guilt and isolation and even insignificance, which is the opposite of our desires as human beings. And this leaves us hoping for things and thinking about things or doing things that we think will bring light into the dark and into the situation, but we've tried all these other things and it just continues to leave us experiencing the same thing, or maybe even more. Maybe we've just created more hurt and more pain and more guilt. Maybe you're one, when you read the statistics, addictions are on the rise right now. Maybe you're one of those statistics because you've tried all these things. That's why I want to share with you today the simple reminder that there isn't a light that is soon going to dawn, but one that already has and is available for us today. And he isn't just a little light in a tough situation. He's not just a little lamp. He is, in John's words, the light that shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. And this light's ultimate desire is not just to shine on you and show you what you're doing or what you've done wrong. That's not his desire. He wants to shine his light on the way out of the pit that you are experiencing and prove himself to be the pit puller outer that he really is. We just need to be reminded of this so we can open the blinds, as I said, and let him in. So I want to remind you of that today as we start. I do not take lightly. I know people that are hurting so bad right now. Personally, I know this. I know it is real. And as I try and think of things to share and answers to give, all I can do is pray and hope and somehow help them see the light that is there and available to shine in the darkness that they're experiencing and bring some peace that passes all understanding and some hope that doesn't make sense in the situation. We're going to, in the weeks ahead, get in amazing ways that this light provides for us. But for this week, I just simply want to say, if you are tired and weary and frustrated and angry and broken and hurting, or some or all of the above, or something I haven't even said yet, just take some time to step away from the negativity and the news that is all around us and remember what he has already done. Don't make the season just about Christmas trees and Christmas lights and cookies and all that stuff that's so good. Remember the thing that was predicted would happen, that eventually did happen, and that is still available for us today. Consider the gift that is available for you, and then sit with him and allow him to start shining brighter and brighter in your mind, in your heart, and in your life. And ask him to help you remember that we don't have to sit around hoping and waiting for the sun to come up, but to remember that it already has. I would just ask us to simply, if we do anything, make this season about finding times and opportunities to open the blinds and to allow the light in and to allow ourselves to bask in that light. And I believe as we do that, he will do the rest. He will pull us from whatever pit that we may be in. And he will then move us forward with where he wants us to go and what he wants us to do. Three different phrases, three different sentences as we go today that I want to leave us with and that I encourage you to consider through this next week and as you kick off the season. I love you guys. I look forward to seeing you again. Maybe the most loving thing I can do for you at this moment or share with you today are these three things. One is a quote. One is a promise. And one is a prayer. So as we go, hear these words. Know that the light is available. Open the blinds. Allow him to shine on you. And bask in the gift of the light. In the words of Ray Ortlund, he says, God's answer to everything that has ever terrorized us is a child. Think about that this week. How amazing is that? For to us, a child is born. To us, a son is given. And the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. So with that gift given to you and that promise to hang on to, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you. And I encourage you to turn your face towards him and allow him to give you peace.
Lord bless you and make his face shine